I'm super excited to be here, and I know you haven't been in New York for a while. It's been a few years since you've had an event here. So I thought for new readers, maybe we should start with your origin story, just in keeping with the superhero theme. But why don't you tell everybody where you came from and how you found each other from a planet far, far away on an ice floe?
All right, so that's Christina, and I'm Lauren. So we actually met when we were writing fan fiction online, and we were reading each other's stories and sort of like falling in love with each other's words. And I organized a panel at San Diego Comic-Con for, I was about to make a Comic-Con joke, but I'm in New York, so I'll be very careful. She came out because she had a really popular fanfic at the time, and we met in person, and we just really hit it off. Like, we are very different personalities, but we just totally clicked, and we decided to start trying to write together. And that's sort of how it started.
And there's this wonderful piece in the acknowledgement section of this book, Josh and Hazel's, where I think you, Christina, you talk about what the purpose of your writing was initially, writing together.
Hi, I'm Christina. So when we first started writing together, it was really just to make each other laugh, or like shock each other or make each other blush. And that's, I think, why it was so fun, because writing is so solitary. And so I would be writing something and laugh, and I would be like, oh my God, she's gonna lose it, or you know what I mean? And so when we were writing Josh and Hazel, that's exactly like what this felt like again. So it was just really fun. And it's crazy that we've written 25 books together, and I feel like we're closer than ever. We like each other more than ever, and it's still just as fun.
Yeah. I mean, there've been writing is hard sometimes. I mean, it's the best job in the world, but it's hard. And so we've had years where it's just been harder than others. And so I feel like Josh and Hazel was a bit of a return to joy for us. And it's like, we just wanted to make ourselves laugh. Yeah. And if we could make you guys laugh too, that's awesome.
And I say, like, in the acknowledgments, this was the book. 2016 was really hard for me. I went through this
2016 was hard for everybody.
Yeah. I actually, at the end of the year, I went in and I had a cake made for New Year's that said "Suck It 2016." And so writing Josh and Hazel, there was a moment where I was writing and I was like, oh my, I'm actually supposed to be a writer. Because there were moments that I really felt like I wasn't supposed to, which is strange because, we've written so much. And so this book, I say, it really helped me find my voice again, this book, so.
I'm so happy to hear that from you, because I feel like when I was I've read so many of your books, and when I was reading Josh and Hazel, I felt like, oh my gosh, as a reader, I felt like it was really freeing. It felt like, oh, it's 2018 and I'm allowed to finally just have a book that's delightful.
I love that.
So I'm really grateful for that. But I want to talk about Hazel specifically. I want to talk about the whole book, but I want to talk about Hazel particularly because I think you guys have always written, your sort of hallmark is these incredibly unique and strong and passionate women and feminist women, but Hazel is really special in so many ways. She's some of you have read the book. Hazel is at one point she describes herself as there's this description of her as being quirky, and she is. I mean, she's super quirky. She has a quirky mom. She has a quirky life, and she's but she's still almost like an anti-manic pixie dream girl, and I kept thinking, how are they doing this? So I'd like you to talk, could you talk a little bit about where Hazel came from and what her, was she designed that way, or did she just come out of you that way?
So the book came about, and this is not a spoiler because it's in the very first page, but the book came about from a Tumblr post that we had seen a couple years ago where somebody posted an email she sent to her college TA when she was on painkillers. And at the end, she accidentally said, "I love you," and then signed her name. And it was the funniest letter. So it gave us the idea of what if that's a person that you really admire and you run into later in life? How does that story unfold? And so every one of our books has a little bit of a spark. Sometimes it's something like that we see online. Sometimes it's something we see when we're driving around. Sometimes it's just an idea we've had in our heads for a while. But that's how this one started. And so we started talking about who is that person that has to write that letter right at that second. You know what I mean? That can't wait until the next morning when the painkillers have worn off and send that email. And so, Hazel became sort of eccentric from the start, but we didn't want her to feel like the manic pixie dream girl cliche. We didn't want her to feel like the zany character that just feels like not a real person. We wanted her to feel real, and I think the way we did that was by framing her with the mom's story of how the mom is also a woman that sort of bounces outside the standard curve a little bit, and she's okay with that, and being raised by a woman who lets you embrace the sides of yourself that are different, even if they're not different in the same way that your mom is different. And so I think some of the qualities that we tried to bring in with Hazel, like her love for the animals and her love of costumes and that kind of thing, I feel like it made her feel more real to us when we were writing her, and that was really important. So,
yeah, I'm gonna read a quote from this book because I love Hazel so much, you guys. I could teach a class on how much I love Hazel. But there's this great moment in the book where Hazel says to herself out loud, you're in Josh's POV, and she says, being myself is enough, I'm enough. And then Josh says, she's not saying it to convince me or even herself, she's already there. And I just think that there's like something very Christina Lauren about that moment, but there's also something like so freeing as a reader to be reading a heroine who like knows that she's not for all markets, but like is totally fine with it. So, I mean, this isn't really a question, but more it's just like, thank you for writing like that character in this time, because I feel like it's hard for women now.
And I think one thing that was fun for us in writing, because a lot of this book was really finding our voice again, was giving ourselves permission to do things the way that the book felt like it was happening naturally. So like Josh and Hazel are genuinely friends at first. It's not the friends to lovers trope where somebody's got this unrequited crush for years and all that stuff. That's a very pretty necklace, by the way. But that it's like they're genuinely friends. They genuinely care about each other, and they learn to love each other for who they are before they fall in love with each other. And I think Hazel's thing is that she doesn't think that she's the right fit for Josh because he's this sort of perfect, phenotype of a man in her mind. But the truth is that the reason he's perfect for her is that she's also perfect for him. And so, I love that neither of them has to change. He doesn't have to become more wacky. He doesn't have to start getting crazy and going out drinking and, taking off his shirt. He doesn't have to do things different to be the person that she wants. And I don't know, it's in some ways it's a quiet story, but I also think it's a very sweet love story. It's very real to us. So thank you for that.
It was very real to me too. So, but I think that one of the things that you guys do so well are these friendships that turn into something more. And I know that Roomies is happening on a big screen now, which is amazing. Like, rom-coms are back, and Christina Lauren is writing them, which is amazing. And you have written the script for Roomies. Roomies is sort of an interesting concept. It's a green card story. And I know that things shifted between writing the book and writing the movie, and I wondered if you could talk a little about that.
So when we wrote Roomies, it was prior to the election. So some of you may not follow us and know the change that we've made and stuff. So we've turned in we've turned in the second draft of the script. That's where we're at. So Roomies is the story of, for those that don't know, Holland Backer, and she works for her uncles who have this big Broadway show, and she has this huge crush on this busker that plays at the subway named Calvin. And when the star of her uncle's show leaves, she has this idea that she can bring Calvin in to audition, and he's amazing and made for it, but then it turns out that he's not in the country legally. And so, like you do, she like offers, her uncles have done everything for her, and she wants to do something for them, so she offers to marry him. So the book came out, and people loved it and stuff, but then like the world changes, and so when we were approached by Jenna Dewan, who is one of the producers, one of the things is that the story of a white man coming in and being an illegal alien or or, undocumented, and just getting his visa was just way too easy. And so, we talked about what we should do and stuff, and we really, especially because while we were doing this, we were hearing stories of, these camps they were putting people in and separating children from their parents and all of these things. So we decided that our lead needed to be a person of color from a non-white country. So Calvin has now been, he's now Mateo Perez, and he's from Mexico City. And the thing is we love Calvin so much, but Mateo is not just a stand-in for Calvin. He's a completely different character, and it feels so much more natural, and their romance feels so much more earned now. He's so swoony and sweet in his own way, and he has so much more to lose because he's been here, for all of these years, and to marry her, he's putting himself at risk, and so now, he has stakes too. But so we've turned in the second draft. We're waiting for our next set of notes, and it's very swoony and we always say usty. Do you guys know what it means when we say usty? Like unresolved sexual tension. Like you just want them to just rip their clothes off. So we feel like it's very that. And we're really excited that it'll have music and stuff. So yeah, we're really excited.
And
You've read it. You read? Did you?
I've not read the script.
Oh,
What?
I thought we
we
sent
were
it to you.
best friends.
I thought we sent it to you.
No, but I'm gonna get it on my
think you're
phone.
the next.
I hope
you're the
soon.
next round of edits.
We needed it more polished before we
Oh
could send
well,
it to
I
you.
mean,
Yeah.
obviously. But this brings up a really interesting question, which is, and I know because we've talked about it many times, and we talk about it a lot here at the events at Strand. But this idea of romance as political, romance as action, and there are a lot of romance novelists who feel very strongly, or people who write rom-coms who feel very strongly that politics is not to be put into those books. It's not a part of that story, of a love story. So, yeah. And then, but I think that there's sort of the obvious, how do you feel about that? But then when you set pen to paper, are you thinking of the book as action in some way?
I mean, I think we have had people in the past on our Twitter feed or elsewhere say, I came here to read your romance, not to hear your politics. And our response to that is always a very gentle, if you can read our books and not understand our politics, you're not really reading them very carefully. Because I don't feel like it's something that we ever hide. And so it's important to us that people come away with that feeling like this is the world that we want to live in. And I think that's one of the roles that romance can really play in popular culture, is we can show the world what the world should be in our minds. And I mean, I think romance in many ways is on the forefront of a lot of these movements of embracing queer identity and, romance stories of people with different disabilities and whatnot, differently abled bodies, making love. And I think that there's a lot of things that romance can push the boundaries on. And we have a responsibility, I think, to really help shape that. So when we sit down, Christina and I aren't ever saying, okay, what political issue are we going to address in this romance? But when we're talking about our characters, we want them to feel like strong, self-actualized women who either don't know what they want but figure it out, or know what they want and go get it, and also can be flawed or, emotional or broken or whatever it is that they are, and that's not, they don't end up having to be fixed in any way, right? That we can be who we are just because we're just fine that way. And I think that if we have a political message, it's that. There's not one kind of strong woman. We have the Chloes who are very brassy and ballsy and get out there. And I shouldn't use the word ballsy, but I mean, it's, it's like she's very assertive and she's almost aggressive in some ways. And that's her personality, and she succeeds. And then there's the Sarahs and the Mias of our books who are much more, they're strong in quieter ways. So I think we like to embrace all the different ways that you can be strong.
It's also such a relationship between writer and reader that we want our readers to see themselves in our books. And we've actually had readers earlier point out, you have a series set in New York and almost everybody is white. And we were you are 100% right. And so we really, really do make an effort. There are some stories that aren't ours to tell, but we really, really make an effort now to make sure that our books are representative of the people that are reading them and look like the world that we live in. And it's been so amazing to see how much people have embraced it. Nothing like makes us happier. Like, especially like Hazel, so many people were like, I feel like I'm reading about myself. And so that's been one of the most amazing things about this book.
Well, and one of the things that I mean, and I find this with so many of your books, but I feel like there are two kinds of romances. There's sort of the romance in the phone booth where it's like the two people sort of falling in love in a really like intense way. And then there's romance in like sort of Yosemite where like it's two people falling in love with this like rich landscape of people around them. And I feel like that's what Christina Lauren does so well. And it's magnificent because you feel like every time you turn a corner in the book, you see like a whole new side of the world, a whole new place, a whole new sort of community to explore. And I think with Josh's life and family, you've really done that remarkably. And I know, I mean, I'm looking at you both, and I know neither of you are Korean, and so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about research and like how you build a community like that.
I mean, first and foremost, you have to do a lot of research when you write, but then once you have a draft of a book, you can't just send it off and say, I Googled being Korean and I think I nailed it, you know? You have to get sensitivity readers. And so, like for autobiography, you know, I identify as bisexual, but I'm not a bisexual man. So we made sure that we had like a ton of sensitivity readers. We had people in the LDS church. We had queer men, queer women. We had people who had left the church, people who are still in the church. Like we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of people reading this book who could tell us like, you didn't get this quite right. And so we wanted to do the same for Josh and Hazel. So we had a number of sensitivity readers that were both, you know, Korean American or married to a Korean man or, you know, had been raised in Korea and moved here. I mean, we really wanted to try and make it feel authentic. And it's important. One of the things she said earlier is some of the stories are not ours to tell. We would never tell the story of somebody moving from Korea to the United States and like finding their way here. That's not an identity story that's ours to tell, but like the romance between these two individuals, that's not really about their cultural identity, but about their romantic identity. Those are the stories that we want to embrace. And so I think just making sure you get people to read it and tell you what you didn't get right, most importantly, what you didn't get right, is really important.
I'm trying to think. I have a lot of. Okay, so I know a lot of people here probably have been with you since Beautiful Bastard, which was your first.
It feels so long ago.
It was what, 7 years ago? It was time ago.
It was like 5.5 only.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was 2013. God. I know. What?
That's crazy.
I
know. So a lot of you. So people here have definitely been here since then. I see people nodding. So, but you've come a long way since then, right? I mean, you've written YA, you've written women's fiction, you're now writing sort of rom-coms about a different kind of person than a sexy billionaire. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that evolution. Like, how did it happen? Was it sort of natural? Was it just sort of one day it just happened? Or was it, boredom? Was it a challenge? What?
I think Bastard was fun, and it was done in a time where we didn't think anyone was really going to pay attention. So, like, the whole point, like she said earlier, was just to, like, make each other laugh and just have a good time. And I think that there's a piece that comes with putting out a book that is both fun and ridiculous that gets a lot of attention, and you want to do better every time, right? And so you want every book to be better than the one before. And so I feel like that's been the sort of rule that we've set for ourselves, is we need to feel like every book is better than the one that came before. And part of that is just us growing as writers and, thinking about the kinds of stories that we want to tell. And some of it is just because we have different kinds of stories in our head than like the panty ripping every chapter, which is super fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, I feel like, we had a bunch of really sexy books that were a blast to write. Doesn't mean we won't do those again. But then it just kind of happened that the stories we started getting in our head started to feel a little bit less like, of that. And
I was
more
going to say,
like
the whole question, I was like, you're talking about sex, aren't you?
the funniest
No,
thing
there's
is
like a great sex scene in this, like right at the end.
Yeah.
The sex scene at the end
Yeah.
is
I think the
Cracker
thing is,
Jack.
it depends. It
I heard it.
depends
Oh,
on
yeah.
the characters. Because, like, you're not going to write, well, I mean, I'm trying to think of like which ones you would do, but Bennett and Chloe have a very particular like relationship. You're not going to write, I don't even know, doing the exact same thing. So for us, like you can have as many sex scenes in a book as you want, as long as each scene fits the characters and each scene moves the book forward or even
Right.
backward
Right.
a little bit. And so I think that that's just it. As we started to write like, probably more complex characters, some of those scenes just don't fit in as much. Also, you guys, that's a lot of sex
Okay,
to
so I
write,
actually have
okay?
to say, like, this is just to interject. So when we were first, like, Player, I think, was like 95,000 words or something. I mean, and there was a lot of banging. And then the last couple books we've turned in have been like 65, 70,000. And we're like, why are our drafts so much shorter? Like, are we not able to get, and then we're like, oh, wait, there's not 10 pages of sex in every single chapter anymore. And it's like, it's true. Like, if you take, and I think in those books, though, that for each of those stories, the sex moved the story forward. And we just have sort of slightly different focus now. But it is really funny that if you're not writing these like super long sex scenes, the books are a little bit shorter.
But how much of that also is stylistically, right? You can't, coming from fan fiction, you sort of have
Well,
to
you put everything in.
deliver
I mean,
the goods.
The reason we
every
started
time.
writing fan fiction was because of the fade to black in Twilight. So, in fact,
I wrote like 1 million words
True
of fic,
confession.
basically.
that's why. So we have some things. I mean, yeah, because the sex in Josh and Hazel is pretty steamy. But yeah, so some books are just going to be dirtier than others. And it's really funny because in Love and Other Words, we started writing that book like in 2010 or something. So my daughter was like 11 years old. And then when we were finishing the book, she's almost 18. So it is very different to write a book about 17-year-olds sneaking out to have sex when your kid is 10, as opposed to when your kid is that age.
I want to leave time for questions because I know probably there are a lot of them. But first and foremost, last and most importantly, I'd like to talk about Jason Momoa on a plane. So those of you who do not know this, wait, which one of you? You? Christina was upgraded on a flight, and Jason Momoa was sitting behind her.
So I was coming home from a concert. So I went to see BTS last weekend, and I left LA at like 4:00 in the morning, and I was so tired. And so they had upgraded me, and I was super grumpy about being upgraded because they put me in the front row, so all my bags were, and so I was sitting there, and I was
She likes her things with her.
I'm like the old lady in Titanic. I like need my things with me. And so, which is also why Lo and I don't sit by each other on the plane, because Lo gets like in her zone.
In the bubble.
I'm
don't-
like, oh, and my lip gloss. Oh, and like, wait a second, I have a charger.
She'll be like this.
Yeah. And so I was sitting there and I was half asleep and people were coming in, and then all I saw at first were like legs. And they were really nice legs. And then I looked up and it was him, and it took me like a solid 10 seconds, and he looked right at me, and I swear like nobody seemed to know who he was. And
That's
he
not
knew,
true. I swear.
He knew
That's
the
not true.
okay, either that or I have no poker face, which they will all tell you is true. And it was like I went like this. And he like looked at me, and like he had his hair up in a bun, and and if I remember right, do you want to know what he was wearing?
Yeah.
I think he was wearing shorts, and then he had like a t-shirt and like something tied around. It was just all like slouchy and casual, and so he went, and I was like, and I'm like looking at everyone around me like. So he was like 3 rows. He was like 3 rows behind me, but he was on the opposite side, and so I was just like sitting like this, like the whole time. And I texted her immediately. Her and Alice Clayton and Nina Bocci. I texted them immediately, and I was like, I think Jason Momoa is on my flight. And Lo was immediately like, take a picture. But I didn't tweet or anything on the plane because I didn't want to be like, I didn't know where he was going, or I don't, want to be that person. But as soon as I got off the plane, FanX, which is like Salt Lake Comic-Con, was happening. And I was like, oh, people know where he is. Let me tweet this. But he was very quiet. He slept almost the entire flight. He's very pretty sleeping face. I did not take pictures of him. I was just like, thank you so much for giving me first class and for having him look like that.
But now I'm just imagining what would happen if he'd had the seat next to you. Like, how would you have just
so when
under
somebody
the chair?
She would have talked to him because she can't not talk to the person next to her on the airplane.
But when I'm in front
of my lip gloss.
When I'm with nobody is more shocked that I write dirty stuff than me, because when I am in front of somebody that's like good looking, I cannot keep my shit together. I'm like, wow, like look at the architecture.
She's not exaggerating. It's like
plane.
exactly like that. We had this really hot waiter one time, and he came up to the table, and she was
we
like,
were calling him Bedford Sullen because he looked just like Twilight
yeah,
Edward.
It was great.
And so every time he would come by, I would be like,
she would get so awkward. She would just look at the ceiling every time he came by.
He's like, can I get,
do you
want your order? And
do you
I was
want
like,
some food?
I'll have whatever she's having. I just could not keep it together. I don't know what it is. This is why God had me married at like 18 years old, because he was like, no.
She won't survive it.
Yeah.
Okay. That was as delightful as I hope it would be. So, questions for Christina and Lauren. Yes, you win.
I'm a little flustered because I got stuck at work and then I couldn't get here through the traffic. But I was dying to meet you, girls. We were dying to meet you too. So this is my question, and I apologize if somebody already asked this, but I appreciate the way you guys have transitioned from one genre to another, but I'm wondering what was the catalyst to bring you two together in the first place?
To bring us together as writers? Yeah, so we were writing fan fiction online and reading each other's stories, and then we met in San Diego in person in 2009. So next year is our 10-year anniversary, guys. So you need to send me gift ideas because I am just very flustered. It's 10? Aw, what? Aw.
Airline tickets, Jason Momoa.
I know. Christina was hoping it was diamonds.
I'm such a jewelry person.
Yeah, right. And so we just decided to start writing together. We met in July and we finished writing a little story together that August. That was a sign of things to come. We just hammered it out. We're like, well, that was fun.
Actually, Lo bought this necklace for me, when we published Bastard, I think, and I've always worn it, and she calls it her collar.
Not in a weird way.
And I'm so superstitious.
Totally in a weird way.
I'm so superstitious
How is that not weird?
I never take it off.
You haven't noticed I'm the bossy one, so.
Yeah, you may be able to tell we have very, very different personalities, but it just works. It would not work if we had two. If we had 2 Lows, they would murder each other. If we had 2 Christinas, we'd
never
be like,
get
it's fine.
done.
We'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's fine. Let's watch this YouTube video. It's cool.
So now that it's been 10 years, do you guys think that you would ever transition to doing something solo? Or are you
it's not broken.
It's perfect.
No, I mean,
we tell each other. So she's really fast. So I tell her all the time, you could totally write that. Are you kidding me? But it's so fun to write together.
We've tried writing, when things get really busy, we've tried the thing where it's okay, I'm going to write this one and you edit this and do this. And it's just not as fun. There's some magic lacking when one of us is trying to do it on their own. It just, I don't know, it doesn't work. So, yeah.
They're fated mates.
Yep.
That sounded very
Yes.
To segue from that question, first of all, I love you guys. Love you. you write so seamless, but you would never guess that it was more than one person writing it.
Editing.
I mean, do you alternate chapters, POVs? I mean, what's your process?
It just depends on the book. So if a book has an alternating point of view, then we'll usually like switch. Like Lo writes an amazing Bennett, even though like I had originally wrote that character when it was fic all those years ago. She writes it better than I do because she is essentially Bennett. And so it just depends. If it's like one point of view, we'll just switch. And we also have a lot more going on than we used to have. So sometimes, like one of us will be doing something on a script and one's like doing first pass revisions, or somebody's finishing something up and the other's doing, copy edits or, that kind of thing.
But even if, for example, if I wrote in the book, like I wrote Bennett and she wrote Chloe, we will both have been through it so many times by the time it publishes that there's no chapter that doesn't have lines, paragraphs, everything from the other two. So I think that's how we try and make it feel seamless, because I was always very wary of reading books from co-author duos just because of that feeling of it being choppy. And so that's one thing we don't ever want it to feel, unless it's supposed to, right? Like you're supposed to tell the difference between Will and Hannah's voices. And so in that case, it really worked for us. But I mean, if you're not, you don't want it to feel like there's a stronger or less strong writer. And that's true for us. We're equally strong writers. So we just want to make sure it feels smooth.
Yeah.
Okay. I was ready. Hi guys. So how do you guys deal with your like personal lives and everything?
That's been a balance that we've had to find.
The
and
question,
I'm a kid and I cannot do nothing in my house.
right.
just for the recording, the question is, how do you balance personal and writing lives?
I feel like our first year where we had, so in 2013 we had 6 books out, and we both were working full time and we had little kids, and I feel like there was no balance there. Like nothing got all of us, right? And so the next year when we were writing full time, we had to figure out how to balance family and work. And then the next time we had to figure out how to, next year we had to figure out how to balance work, family, and health. And I feel like every year we have to add one more thing in, if that makes sense. Like it is really hard to find balance when you're, especially because we really love what we do and we're sort of hyper ambitious people. So it's hard to slow down, but it's really had to be a conscious thing. And it helps that there's 2 of us, because I can remind her like, you have to go to bed, Like I'm fast. I'll get my words done in a few hours and then I'll answer emails and do other stuff. But Christina will get as many words done in the day. It just means she's working all day long. And so sometimes it's like the reminder of just like, you need to give your brain a break, right? So I think like being best friends helps too, because we'll make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. It's like really important to me that she's taking care of herself, because she's not only my business partner, but she's also my family, So.
In the back.
Would you write Beautiful Bastard differently?
Yes.
Anything specifically you would change?
He would be less harassy.
Would you write, sorry, for the recording, would you write Beautiful Bastard differently, and how?
So
we're like unscrolls the answer.
So some of you might know that we've been working on a pilot for Beautiful Bastard. And so we say in the book, Bennett and Chloe are totally on the same, like if anything, I would say Chloe is more in charge of that relationship, but it doesn't appear that way. There's like an imbalance of power, from the outside. And so we have made some changes that make it a little less chase around the desk-ish.
Yeah.
I don't even know how.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have made some changes so it still feels like, because that's the thing I think for us is we still want you to feel the same story. We're just changing like some of the details and the timelines of, how they happen. But yeah, I mean, it's a different world than it was in 2013. And I also think like when we wrote that, we turned it in like 2012 and stuff, we censor ourselves more now. I think before we were just like, this is insane. Oh my God. For me, the fun of that is like writing 2 idiots that are doing stuff that I would never do in my entire life.
And that they would never do.
And yet,
They're both behaving terribly, and they would never have done that in any other situation. They drive each other crazy. So we didn't want to lose that energy.
Yeah.
We just wanted to make, there is a real power imbalance because he is literally her boss. And in the book, she's an intern. She's not even like, she's not even like a full-time employee. And so I feel like there's a real issue there, right?
Yeah.
And we are aware of that issue. And so when people tell us it's their favorite book, we're like, I get that. But honey, like, and so I think like we want to make sure when it gets adapted, because it's a when, like that it embraces a little bit of the strength that we want it to have now, but also it, acknowledges that he's doing terrible things and she's doing terrible things, and they kind of work through that.
Our favorite thing, and we use this when we talk about Roomies, is Victoria Schwab said this, that books are static, but authors are not. And so we've changed in our like view of the world. These are the times, like I live in Utah, and so that's one of the things that like Twitter and stuff has been so amazing for me to see all of these different people and different ideas. Those are the things like that make, the internet amazing, is getting to learn from all these people and learning all of these things that like, oh, right. Okay. I would do that differently now, 2018 is very different than 2012.
So I love your new book. I love all your books. Big fan. So it is being adapted to screen. Do you have dream casting?
For Roomies? Or Josh and Hazel. So Josh and Hazel hasn't been optioned yet.
But when you do picture something?
Dream casting.
Well, we had a photo shoot done with the publisher, and we ended up using some of the images from promo, and that's really how I see them now. I think we'll post something on tonight on Instagram so you guys can see. Yeah. We put that in the CeeLo and Friends group, and they're so cute. And apparently, at the photo shoot, they just had the best chemistry, and they just really captured sort of the feel of the characters. I think, don't you guys think so?
So what happened is there was a different cover. Well, okay, we've had like 3 covers, but originally they did a photo cover, and they like got these photos, and so we gave them this idea, and it had these photo strips, and it was adorable. But as soon as people saw it, they were like, YA.
It looked really YA.
And we're like, look at them, they're 30. But from a thumbnail, and even our friends Alice and Nina, we were like ready to fight for this cover. And we were like, what do you think? And we sent
didn't
them
say
the
anything
picture.
else. We just sent it,
and Nina goes, oh, is that your new YA? And we were like, damn it. Yeah. And so they changed the cover. But luckily we fought to we were like, please just let us use some of the pictures. They're so cute. And so they let us use some of them. So, I mean, that would be fine with me.
So, I mean, to answer your question, we have a fan casting thread in the CeeLo and Friends group. I very much appreciate all the pictures that are coming in because they are amazing. So keep those coming. But as far as the fan casting goes for us, it's not going to be up to us.
Well, also though, Betsy, who's one of the producers of Roomies, I had sent her a name. I was like, just FYI, I'd never heard of this person. And somebody, a reader tweeted us, I'm sure we're way too early for this. And she was like, no. Have people send them in, because especially Mateo has to be not only like insanely charming and gorgeous, but he has to play guitar and sing. And so we don't know all of those people that exist. And so she was like, yeah, have people, have them send them in. We'll keep a list. So.
Yep. Send them in. For all the projects. Bastard, autobiography maybe, Roomies, Josh and Hazel. So.
Other questions?
Can I ask another one? Yeah. Do you guys are ever gonna write something like The House, something like a little romance and spooky and kind of?
Are you ever going to get back to books like The House, which was a YA?
Yes. Okay.
A
So
mystery, right?
I do have an answer for that. I think it's okay to say this. I think if we ever did something like that again, which we are considering, we would probably.
She looked at me like,
Then it's fine.
and I was like,
I think we would probably not do it under the Christina Lauren name, just because it's really off-brand for us at this point. We are sort of more contemporary. And I think one of the things we realized with The House and Sublime is that it was confusing to readers. We had Beautiful Bastard, Stranger, Bitch, Bombshell, and then we had Sublime, and they were like, like, what is this? And so I think we learned a little bit about branding, and if we did something like that again, which I hope we do, that it would be under a different name.
I would love to write like a Scream. Like I say this at every single thing. Like, the Scream movies. I think that would be so fun. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. So I love all your books. But I was wondering if you would ever write a book individually.
Would you ever write separately?
We don't have plans to. It doesn't sound like fun to me.
We're way too codependent.
I've written some fic that I posted under pen names by myself just for like when I have a crazy story that I know either she wouldn't want to write or I just like nobody would care about. But I don't think we would want to do. I don't know. Never say never, but
The thing
like
is,
I don't
if
have
she
any
did,
reason
I would be
to.
her biggest cheerleader, and if I wanted to, she would be mine. This is how codependent we are. So she goes to like, have you ever heard of Orange Theory? She goes to Orange Theory, and if
You're gonna tell them this.
and if I, well, because I said this the other day, I was like, oh my god, if I told somebody this, they would think I was
No, because your
psycho.
mom was there and my text came in.
Oh yeah. It was. She sends me her heart rate monitor every day, and my mom was like, "Why do you have
Like
Lowe's
my little like
heart rate?"
report. I just text her the screenshot and her mom's like, "What's that?" She's like, "Oh, it's Lowe's heart rate." And your mom was like, "What the hell are you doing?"
because she sends it, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, look at how fast your recovery time was." And I like no, I like see it every day, so I'm just like, "Look how long you were in the red." Oh my gosh.
She's just such a good cheerleader.
She listens to my dumb stuff and listen to her stuff that she's excited about, you know.
Yes.
Hi guys. I was wondering, are you in any other fandoms now, or have there been other fandoms in the past other than Twilight that you guys have either kind of actually actively been in, or even just been a lurker, which is usually my.
That's a great question.
Well, I mean, I consider myself ARMY because I love BTS so much, which I discovered K-pop while writing Josh and Hazel. Our reader group has been like, we actually dedicated Josh and Hazel to some people in our CeeLo and Friends group because they gave us like stories and just amazing things. And one of them, they were explaining honorifics to us, and she was like, you should watch some K-pop videos to see how they talk to each other. And I watched a couple and I liked them, and then I loved
It was like a rabbit
She's
hole.
like, I see you.
I lost her.
And as soon as I saw BTS, I was like, what is this magic? And so that, and then like Lo has written fic for like Hunger Games.
Alias, Buffy. I wrote Days of Our Lives fic when I was a teenager. And my mom found all of it when I left for college, and it was super sexy and really bad. And I'm sure she laughed her ass off.
I was like super intellectual, and so when we first like wrote Beautiful Bastard and she read it,
Oh,
I
God.
think she said it's very charming.
She goes, she's very, like, she reads a lot. And she's like, I'm going to read it. I was like, don't. And she said it was charming, and I was like, okay, that's cool. You didn't actually read it. She's like, no, I like the stairwell scene, and I like the La Perla scene. And I was just like, stop it! But her favorite book in the series was Player, and she like started talking about Will, and she got a little like fangirly breathless. I was like, this is weird. We have to stop. I love that you read the books, but I don't want to hear what you liked about Will.
I also always love the reaction whenever Will's name is mentioned. He would seriously look at Bennett and be like, told you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi guys. So Ansel is still hands down one of my favorite heroes of yours. Do you think you'll ever revisit the Miles characters?
I think there's a possibility.
Because when we finished Wicked Sexy Liar,
We were not ready to be
We weren't
done.
ready to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this, but like I'm not one of those writers that like writes a character and is like, oh my god, it's so good, or like talks to him like they speak to me, or But when we wrote Ansel, I loved Ansel so much that Lo was reading my chapters for like Dirty Rowdy Thing, and she's like, why is Ansel in the background eating grapes? Like
He
he's
was in
not
every
even-
single scene.
He's
I was
not
like,
even
why
supposed to
is
be
he
in the
here?
country. Why? What is he doing?
And like, yeah, it was great.
I was like, but look at it, he just like threw it up and caught it. Isn't that cute?
So I don't know what form it would be. I mean, but I think there's a possibility. Actually on our Instagram story today, we posted the throwback pictures for the Dark Wild Night that we had some illustrations commissioned of Lola and Oliver, and I just put them out there. I really love those.
Yeah.
So I've just been thinking about those today. It's funny that you ask about Ansel.
We did have like a really short thing that we posted somewhere of like the first time that Ansel comes back or something. But we have like for the fan art and stuff. That's one of the reasons why we love Fandom so much. Everybody who's ever done fan art from us is like somebody that we have seen on Tumblr that does fan art for like One Direction or, you know, something.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question, which is, we now know Ansel is Christina's favorite. So who's your favorite?
I bet I know.
All right, who do you think?
Oliver.
I was going to say Elliot or Oliver. Yeah, those are the ones that I would like want to marry. But
They both wear glasses. Isn't that weird?
That's so weird.
That was sort of weird.
Yeah, but I think I have the most fun writing. I have the most fun writing Bennett. Hazel and Josh were pretty fun because we both wrote both those characters. That was a really good time. But yeah. Thank you guys. Oh, you have
Yes.
Do you have a ritual when you finish?
a ritual?
Cry. I don't know. Lo will like.
Oh yeah, we do. I do.
Well, so like right as we're getting ready to send something in, Lo will like start reading it and reading it and reading it, and like we think we're done, and then she goes back and she's like, oh, and she like changes something, and
I'll attach it to the email and I'll write the email because I'm like very controlling in that way. And then
she always sends in every book we have ever turned in.
Christina's like, whatever, it's cool. I'm like,
Whatever,
no, I
it's
gotta
fine.
do this.
It's
And
just
so,
a draft, it's fine.
But then I'll like remove the attachment and open it and read through like a section again,
she'll
and I'll be
change
like,
it.
no, it's okay. And then I'll attach it. I'll do that like 5 times, and then I send it, and I'll be like, I sent it. She's
And
like,
she'll
good job.
start she'll just be absolutely freaking out and panicking, and that's like Xanax to me, because if she's freaking out, it's just the way it goes. But normally we turn it in, I don't look at it again until like it comes back, and then they'll be like, well, you know, like Hannah something. I'm like, who's Hannah? Because it's been like so long. But she will just keep going back. I swear to you, 2 weeks later she'll go, oh, I was looking through it and I saw that we had like 2 periods in a row. I'm like, why are you still looking at that?
I like that we end on a super neurotic moment
There's
for
one,
me. This is great.
There's a question at the back.
That's our
I should have asked
publicist.
that question. Wait, I'm going to pretend that was mine.
That was our publicist. Sorry, ma'am.
So tell us what to expect next from Christina Lauren.
All right, so our next book is out December 4th, and it's called My Favorite Half Night Stand. And it is a rom-com, and I still laugh out loud when I'm reading it, which is good for everybody.
This is another one that the readers helped, because we have been married forever. We do not internet date. And so our readers helped so much.
We sent out a questionnaire. So the premise of this is there's a group of friends. They are all professors at UC Santa Barbara, and a very important person is coming to speak at the commencement, having a banquet, and there's going to be a black tie event. They want to have dates. So they all decide that they're going to join a dating app together and go on this adventure together. But Millie, the main character, ends up sleeping with one of the guys, her best friend Reed, and they decide, no, that was fun, that was great, but let's keep doing this dating thing. And so eventually there's tension with them, and Millie creates a character, her own sort of like a separate account, because online profiles are often really terrible for women, and you get a lot of dick pics. I don't think there's any kids here. And so she creates an account under a new name, and she matches with Reed. So it's sort of like the dynamic there, and it's really fun. We really love it. This book is really fun. So if you guys liked Josh and Hazel, I think you'll really love My Favorite Half Night Stand, and that's out December 4th.
And we have 2 more books coming out in 2019 that should be announced soonish. If not more than 2, we'll see.
Our editor's like, whoa. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.